The alarm bells screamed through the corridors of Harmony 7. Dr. Jake Murphy dropped his coffee mug and ran toward the command center. The hot liquid splashed across his lab coat, but he did not care. Behind him, the sound of breaking glass echoed as his alien lab partner, Zethkari, knocked over 3 specimen containers in panic. "What is happening?" Zethkari's voice came through the translator device, high and shaky. The insect-like alien's forearms waved frantically in the air. "Are we under attack? Should we evacuate?" Jake reached the command center first. Commander Lisa Torres stood at the main display screen, her face calm but serious. Around her, other aliens moved in quick, nervous patterns. The aquatic healer Nimtel had turned a deep blue color, which Jake knew meant extreme fear for her species. "Report," Jake said, breathing hard from his run. Lisa pointed at the screen. "Transport ship Delta 7 is in trouble. They were bringing back samples from the Forbidden Zone. Their containment systems are failing." Jake looked at the display. The ship was small and spinning slowly. Red warning lights blinked all over its hull. Inside that ship were biological samples from one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. If those samples got loose, they could kill everyone on the research station. "How long before total system failure?" Jake asked. 20 minutes, maybe less," Lisa replied. "The alien crew is already in escape pods. They followed standard protocol." Zethkari moved closer, his translator crackling. "Good. We must also evacuate. The Galactic Safety Code is very clear about this situation. We leave the contaminated vessel and wait for specialized cleanup crews." Nimtel's tentacles waved in agreement. Yes. We call for help. We wait at safe distance. This is the proper way." Jake and Lisa looked at each other. They had worked together for 3 years. They could read each other's thoughts. "How many samples are on that ship?" Jake asked. 47 containers, Lisa said. "If they break open, the organisms will spread fast. They eat metal and plastic. They will consume the ship, then drift toward the station. Time to reach us?" 6 hours if the wind patterns hold." Jake nodded and walked toward the equipment lockers. "I need a containment suit and a repair kit." The aliens in the room went silent. Zethkari's translator made a strange buzzing sound. "Wait. What are you doing?" "Someone has to go over there and fix the containment units," Jake said, pulling on a protective suit. "Those samples cannot be allowed to escape." "But the danger level is too high." Zethkari's voice rose to a screech. "The probability of survival is only 38%. Jake stopped and looked at the alien. "That means I have a 62% chance of making it back." "That is not how probability works," Zethkari said. "You have 38% chance to live, 62% chance to die." "Same thing," Jake said, checking his equipment. "Better odds than I had in the war." Lisa was already preparing the rescue shuttle. "I will get you as close as possible, but I cannot dock with that ship. Too dangerous." "Spacewalk it is," Jake said. He picked up his toolkit and headed for the shuttle bay. The aliens followed, him, still talking rapidly in their various languages. The translators were having trouble keeping up. Nimtel's voice came through clearly. "This is not logical behavior. You are choosing almost certain death." Jake stopped at the shuttle bay door. "Look, I understand your concern, but someone has to try. If we just run away, those samples will spread. They will kill millions of people on nearby worlds. But you are just one person," Zethkari said. "Your death will not solve the problem." "My death will not solve it," Jake agreed. "But my success will." He climbed into the shuttle with Lisa. Through the window, he could see the aliens huddled together, talking in quick, scared voices. The shuttle launched smoothly. Lisa was an excellent pilot. She brought them close to the damaged transport ship without triggering any of the safety systems. Jake could see the problem immediately. The ship's power core was overheating. The containment fields were flickering, on and off. Every time they failed, the dangerous samples inside rattled against their containers. 30 seconds until containment failure, Lisa said through the radio. Jake was already outside the shuttle, floating in space. His magnetic boots clicked against the transport ship's hull. He found the maintenance hatch and forced it open with his crowbar. Inside the ship, everything was chaos. Sparks flew from broken circuits. The air smelled like burning plastic. And in the center of the cargo bay, 47 containers full of deadly organisms were shaking like angry animals. Jake went to work. He rerouted power from the life support systems to the containment fields. He used spare parts from his toolkit to bypass the damaged circuits. When his crowbar was not enough, he used his combat knife to strip wires and connect them manually. The ship groaned around him. The hull was starting to buckle from the pressure changes. But Jake kept working. "Containment restored," he said into his radio. "But it will not hold for long. You need to get me out of here." Lisa brought the shuttle close. Jake jumped from the transport ship to the shuttle, his boots barely catching the hull. As soon as he was inside, Lisa fired the engines and took them to safety. Behind them, the transport ship's hull finally gave way, but the containment fields held. The samples stayed locked in their containers as the ship broke apart. Back on Harmony 7, the aliens were waiting. They stared at Jake as he walked out of the shuttle, alive and unhurt. Zeth Kari's translator was quiet for a long moment. Then, "How did you know you would succeed?" Jake smiled and took off his helmet. "I did not know, but I had to try anyway." The aliens looked at each other with expressions Jake could not read. In their languages, there were no words for what they had just witnessed. 3 weeks after the transport ship incident, Elder Vashmoran arrived at Harmony 7. The ancient crystalline being moved slowly through the station corridors, his body making soft chiming sounds with each step. Behind him walked Kreetap, a nervous mammalian diplomat whose fur changed colors with his emotions. Right now his fur was bright yellow with streaks of red. "This investigation is necessary," Elder Vashmoran said to Commander Lisa Torres. His voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. "The Galactic Council is very concerned about human behavior. What we saw 3 weeks ago was not normal." Lisa led them to the meeting room where Jake was waiting. Also present was Dr. Amy Chen, a human geologist who had just arrived from Earth. Amy wore dirt-stained clothes and boots that looked like they had been through a fire. "Dr. Murphy," Elder Vashmoran began, "your actions during the containment crisis have raised serious questions. You ignored all safety protocols. You put yourself in extreme danger. The Council wants to understand why." Jake shrugged. "Someone had to fix the problem. I was the most qualified person available." Kreetap's fur turned bright orange. "But the risk was enormous. You could have died." "Yes," Jake said simply, "but I did not." Elder Vashmoran's crystalline body pulsed with different colors. "This is exactly what concerns us. You speak of life and death as if they are simple choices. This is not how civilized beings think." Amy laughed and pulled a rock from her pocket. The rock was black and still warm. "You want to see how humans think? I collected this sample 2 hours ago from an active lava tube. The temperature down. There was over 1200 degrees. Kreetap's fur went white with shock. You went inside a volcano." "Just a small one," Amy said. "The really dangerous ones are back on Earth. We have teams working inside them all the time." Elder Vashmoran was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps we need to see this world you call Earth to understand how you became this way." Lisa and Jake exchanged looks. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world," Lisa said. "Most species cannot survive there." "We will take precautions," Elder Vashmoran said. "The Council must understand." 2 days later, they were on a ship heading toward Earth. The alien delegation had brought extensive life support equipment. They wore full environmental suits and had medical teams standing by. Amy met them at the landing site. She wore only regular clothes and a light jacket. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "I thought we would start with something easy." She led them to the edge of a volcanic field in Hawaii. Steam rose from cracks in the ground. The smell of sulfur filled the air. In the distance, they could see red lava flowing down the mountainside. Kreetap's environmental suit sensors began beeping frantically. "The toxin levels are too high. We should leave immediately." Amy walked calmly to a fissure in the ground where lava was visible just 20 feet below. She knelt down and began setting up her equipment. "This is actually pretty mild today," Last week, the activity was much stronger. Elder Vashmorn's suit translated his stress patterns into sounds of crystalline fracturing. You consider this mild? Sure, Amy said, lowering a sample collector into the fissure. The really exciting stuff happens when the whole mountain explodes. That is when we get the best data. The delegation moved farther back as Amy worked. She was completely relaxed, humming to herself as she collected samples from what the aliens considered a deadly hellscape. How often do your mountains explode? Kreetap asked in a small voice. Depends on the mountain, Amy said. Yellowstone has not blown up for about 70,000 years, so we think it might be getting ready. When it does, it will probably destroy half the continent. And humans live near this place? Elder Vashmoran asked. Millions of them, Amy confirmed. Great fishing in the area. Later that day, they visited a mountain rescue operation. Captain Ron Blake was preparing his team to save climbers trapped in a blizzard on Mount Denali. The wind was howling at 80 miles per hour. The temperature was minus 40 degrees. Standard rescue, Ron told the aliens as he checked his equipment. Should have them down by tonight. Kreetap stared at the mountain through the storm. You can see nothing. How will you find them? GPS coordinates, radio signals, and experience, Ron said. Plus, they are probably doing everything they can to stay alive up there. Humans are hard to kill. The alien delegation watched from the heated base camp as Ron's team disappeared into the storm. The wind was so strong that normal aircraft could not fly. The rescue team used specially designed helicopters that could handle the extreme conditions. This is routine for you? Elder Vashamoran asked Lisa, who had come to observe. Mountain rescue happens almost every week, Lisa said. Sometimes multiple times per week during climbing season. And people climb these mountains for pleasure. Recreation, challenge, personal achievement, Lisa explained. Some people climb mountains because they are there. Elder Vashamoran's translator struggled with this concept. The closest translation came out as seeking death for entertainment. 6 hours later, Ron's team returned with the rescued climbers. Everyone was cold and tired, but alive. The climbers were already planning their next attempt to reach the summit. That evening in their secure hotel, the alien delegation held an emergency meeting. I am beginning to understand, Elder Vashmoran said. These humans do not avoid danger. They live with it every day. Kreetap's fur was a confused mixture of colors. Their entire planet is trying to kill them. Volcanoes, storms, mountains, wild animals. How do they survive? They do not just survive, Elder Vashmoran realized. They thrive. They have turned survival into an art form. Amy knocked on their door and entered carrying a tray of food. I brought dinner, fresh fish from the volcano lake, mountain berries, and some honey from bees that nest in cliff faces. She set the tray down and smiled. Tomorrow I thought we could visit the Tornado Research Station. Storm season is just starting and the teams are getting excited about chasing some really big ones. The aliens stared at her in stunned silence. Oh, Amy added. And there is a hurricane forming off the coast. The surf rescue teams are hoping it will bring some good waves. Elder Vashmoran made a sound like breaking glass. 2 months after the Earth visit, the Galactic Council decided to embed alien observers with human work crews. They wanted to study human methods up close. Young Trix Allen volunteered to work with mechanic Pete Williams on a deep space mining station. The warrior Quomar joined Dr. Laura Davis on a research vessel studying dangerous stellar phenomena. Trix Allen arrived at mining station Epsilon with 17 cases of safety equipment. Pete met her at the docking bay carrying only a small toolbox and wearing regular work clothes. Where is your safety gear? Trix Allen asked through her translator. Her insect-like body was covered in protective armor. Pete patted his toolbox. Right here. This has everything I need. He opened the box to show her. Inside were basic tools, some spare parts, and what looked like random junk. Trix Allen counted the items carefully. This is only for 17 types of emergencies, she said. What about the other 43 categories of possible disasters? Pete looked confused. What other 43? Equipment failure, atmospheric breach, toxic gas release, radiation exposure, fire, explosion, structural collapse, alien contamination, power grid failure, computer virus, asteroid impact. Trix Allen began listing them on her four hands. Pete nodded along. Yeah, I have stuff for all of that. Where? Pete pointed to different items in his toolbox. Tape fixes equipment. Tape also seals breaches. This breathing mask works for toxic gas and radiation. Fire extinguisher stops fires and explosions. Crowbar handles structural problems. Screwdriver resets computers. And if an asteroid hits us, we are probably dead anyway, so no point carrying gear for that. Trix Allen stared at the simple tools. One item serves multiple purposes? Everything serves multiple purposes if you think about it, right? Pete said. Their first emergency came 3 days later. A solar storm hit the system, sending dangerous radiation toward the mining station. The automated systems began shutting down to protect the equipment. Trix Allen immediately activated her emergency protocols. She sealed herself in a radiation-proof shelter and began calling for evacuation ships. Pete walked calmly to the engineering section, carrying his toolbox. The radiation levels were already climbing, but he wore only a light protective suit. What are you doing? Trix Allen asked over the radio. The safety limits have been exceeded. Someone has to keep the life support running, Pete said. The automatic system shut down, but people still need air and heat. Trix Allen watched through the security cameras as Pete worked in the dangerous environment. He rewired control panels, replaced damaged circuits, and jury-rigged new connections using parts from his toolbox. The radiation will damage your body, Trix Allen warned. Maybe, Pete said, not stopping his work. But if the life support fails, everyone dies for sure. I can handle some radiation sickness. When the storm passed 6 hours later, Pete had kept all the critical systems running. The station's 200 workers were safe because one human had stayed at his post during the dangerous time. Pete came out of the engineering section looking tired but satisfied. Everything is working fine now. The automated systems will start up again in an hour. Trix Allen stared at him. You risked your life for people you barely know. Pete shrugged. That is what you do. Someone has to fix things when they break. Meanwhile, on the research vessel Aurora, Dr. Laura Davis was studying a dying star with her mixed crew. The star was in its final stages, throwing off massive amounts of energy and radiation. Most species would study it from a safe distance, but the human research methods required getting much closer. Quomar, the silicon-based warrior, respected strength and courage, but even he was nervous as the ship moved closer to the unstable star. The energy readings are off the scale, he reported. We should retreat to minimum safe distance. Laura looked at the readings and nodded. Yes, it is dangerous, but we need to get closer to collect the data we need. How much closer? Quomar asked. About 10 times closer, Laura said calmly. The ship's alien crew members began making worried sounds. Their translators were having trouble with concepts like acceptable risk and calculated danger. Laura called a meeting to explain the mission. This star will explode soon. When it does, we will learn things about stellar death that we cannot learn any other way. But we have to be close enough to see it clearly. A nervous aquatic being named Peltar spoke up. What if the explosion is bigger than expected? Then we die, Laura said simply. But the data will be transmitted automatically to other ships. The information will help save lives on worlds near other dying stars. Quomar studied the human woman. In his culture, warriors were respected for facing death in battle. But this was different. This was choosing to face death for knowledge. You would die for information? He asked. I would risk death for information. That could save millions of lives, Laura corrected. There is a difference. When the star finally exploded, the Aurora was positioned exactly where Laura had planned. The ship's shields held just long enough to collect the data before the crew had to retreat. The explosion was even bigger than expected, but Laura's calculations had accounted for that possibility. The data they collected revealed that dying stars gave off specific warning signals before exploding. This information could help evacuate. worlds that were in danger from stellar explosions. After the mission, Quomar approached Laura privately. In my culture, we have stories about warriors who died for honor, but you risk death for strangers you will never meet. Laura smiled. Every person we save with this knowledge becomes part of our tribe. Humans take care of their tribe. Back on mining station Epsilon, Trix Allen was still trying to understand Pete's methods. She watched him repair a broken water recycler using parts from a food processor and some wire from a broken radio. How did you know that would work? She asked. Pete looked at the functioning recycler. I did not know for sure, but water is just molecules moving through pipes. If you understand how molecules move, you can make them go where you want with the right parts. But what if you had been wrong? Then I would try something else, Pete said. You keep trying until something works. Trix Allen made a note in her report. Humans do not fear failure. We fear giving up, Pete corrected. Failure just means you learned one way that does not work. Now you know to try a different way. That night, Trix Allen sent her report to the Galactic Council. She wrote about humans who treated disasters as puzzles to solve, who risked their lives for strangers, and who never stopped trying even when the odds were against them. At the end of her report, she added a personal note. I am beginning to understand why humans survive on their death world. They do not avoid danger, they learn from it. The emergency alert reached every ship in the Kepler system at the same time. A massive asteroid, 20 miles wide, was heading straight for the populated world of New Geneva. The planet had 12 million people who could not be evacuated in time. Admiral Yelthara of the Galactic Fleet immediately ordered all available ships to begin evacuation procedures. The massive fleet could save perhaps 2 million people if they worked for 6 months without stopping. Colonel Sam Rodriguez received the alert on his human ship, the Liberty. He was studying the asteroid data when his alien liaison, Malketh, approached him. Malketh was from a predator species that respected strength, but even he looked worried. The evacuation timeline is impossible, Malketh said. Too many people, not enough ships, not enough time. Sam nodded, still looking at the numbers. Evacuation will not work. We need to stop the asteroid. Stop it? Malketh's translator made a confused sound. It is 20 miles wide and moving, at 30,000 miles per hour. Nothing can stop something that big. Maybe we cannot stop it, Sam said. But we might be able to move it. He called a meeting with the mixed fleet commanders. The aliens arrived expecting to discuss evacuation priorities. Instead, Sam presented a plan that made them all very quiet. We use controlled nuclear explosions to change the asteroid's path, Sam explained. If we can alter its course by just 2 degrees, it will miss the planet. The hive mind cluster Zefton spoke first. All of their voices joined together. The radiation from nuclear weapons will kill the crews. The timing must be perfect. One mistake destroys everything. Yes, Sam agreed. It is dangerous, but it is our only chance to save 12 million lives. Engineer Kate Marshall had been studying the asteroid structure. She stood up and pointed to the display screen. The asteroid is mostly iron and rock. If we place charges in the right spots, we can create a controlled fracture. The explosion will push the large pieces in different directions. A nervous diplomat named Wextar raised his tentacles. What if the explosions are too strong? What if they break the asteroid into many pieces? Then we have many smaller asteroids hitting the planet instead of one big one. Kate smiled. That is actually better. Many small pieces burn up in the atmosphere. One big piece destroys the whole world. The alien commanders looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. Admiral Yelthara spoke for all of them. You want to intentionally break apart a 20-mile asteroid using nuclear weapons with crews working in lethal radiation on a timeline that allows no mistakes. That is the plan, Sam confirmed. And if it fails, then we all die trying, Sam said simply. But if we do nothing, 12 million people die for certain. The operation began immediately. Human ships carried the nuclear charges while alien vessels provided support and coordination. The plan required 3 teams to work directly on the asteroid surface in extreme radiation. Kate volunteered to lead the first team. She and her crew landed on the asteroid wearing heavy radiation suits. The surface was rough and unstable, with chunks of rock breaking off constantly. "First charge placement in 30 minutes, Kate reported over the radio. She was using modified mining equipment to drill deep holes in the asteroid's surface. Zefton monitored the operation from the command ship. The hive mind was having trouble understanding how individual humans could make quick decisions without consulting the group. "How does Kate know where to place the charges?" they asked Sam. "She studied the asteroid structure and made calculations," Sam explained. "Each human crew member can think and act independently when needed." "But what if she makes a mistake?" "Then the other teams will adjust their placements to compensate," Sam said. "We adapt as we go." The second team, led by Pete Williams, encountered problems immediately. Their drilling equipment failed in the high radiation environment. Instead of retreating, Pete began improvising repairs using parts from their life support systems. "Pete, your suit integrity is compromised," Kate warned over the radio. "You need to return to the ship." 5 more minutes, Pete replied, working to bypass the damaged circuits. "I can get this drill working." Malketh watched from the command deck as Pete exposed himself to dangerous radiation levels to repair equipment that should have been impossible to fix in those conditions. "Why does he not retreat?" Malketh asked Sam. "His chance of survival decreases every minute." "Because if he retreats, the mission fails," Sam said. "Pete knows that 12 million people are counting on him." The third team ran into the biggest problem. Their landing site was unstable and part of the asteroid surface collapsed, trapping 2 crew members. The remaining team members faced a choice: abandon their trapped friends and complete the mission, or risk everyone trying to save them. They chose to save their friends first, then complete the mission. Working together, they freed the trapped crew members and still managed to place their nuclear charges in the correct positions. Kate finished her work and reported in. "All charges placed, but the radiation exposure has damaged our equipment. Someone needs to stay behind to manually trigger the detonation sequence." There was silence on the radio. Then Kate continued. "I volunteer. My suit has the least damage. I can probably survive long enough to complete the sequence." "Negative." Sam's voice came through clearly. "We extract all teams first. The detonation will be triggered remotely." "Sir, the remote systems were damaged by radiation. Manual activation is the only option." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then, "I am coming down there myself." "Sir, that is not necessary. I can handle this." "Nobody gets left behind," Sam said firmly. "That is how humans operate." Kate smiled inside her helmet. "Copy that, sir. Human operating procedure." Sam's ship landed on the asteroid as the other teams evacuated. He and Kate worked together to set up the manual detonation system. With 2 minutes until the deadline, they activated the charges and ran for their ship. The explosions lit up space like a new sun. The asteroid cracked along the lines Kate had calculated, breaking into dozens of smaller pieces. The largest fragments missed New Geneva by 50,000 miles. Back on the command ship, the alien observers watched the humans celebrate their success. 12 million lives had been saved by a plan that seemed impossible. Zefton approached Sam as he came aboard. "We do not understand how you made so many individual decisions so quickly. Our species must discuss everything with the collective mind." Sam looked tired but satisfied. "Every human is trained to think like a hive of one when necessary. We can work together or work alone, whatever the situation requires." Malketh studied the human colonel with new respect. "You risked everything on a plan that could have failed." "Yes," Sam agreed. "But we did not fail, and that makes all the difference." 6 months after the asteroid mission, the Galactic Council called for a special assembly. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered on the neutral station of Harmony Prime. Supreme Arbiter Yelthara stood before the Great Assembly Hall, her crystalline form reflecting the lights of 1,000 different worlds. Admiral Frank Carter represented humanity at the assembly. Beside him sat Dr. Beth Ryan, a xenopsychologist who had spent years studying how different species thought and acted. They had been called to answer questions about human behavior. "The evidence is clear," Supreme Arbiter Yelthara began. Humans consistently ignore established safety protocols. They take risks that other species consider suicidal. They volunteer for dangerous missions that have low survival rates. A murmur went through the assembly. Many species had reported similar observations about human crews. However, Yelthara continued, the results speak for themselves. The transport, ship crisis, the volcanic research, the mining station emergency, the stellar explosion study, and the asteroid deflection. In every case, human methods succeeded where traditional approaches would have failed. Elder Vashmorn stood up slowly. His voice carried across the hall like distant thunder. I have observed humans closely. What we first thought was recklessness, I now believe is something different. It is courage based on knowledge and skill. Varkes, who had been one of the strongest critics of human methods, rose to speak. I must admit I was wrong about humans. They do not act without thinking. They simply think faster than we do, and they are willing to accept risks that we cannot understand. Supreme Arbiter. Yelthara turned to Admiral Carter. Please explain to this assembly why humans behave the way they do. Admiral Carter stood and looked around the hall. We come from a world that has been trying to kill us for millions of years. Volcanoes, earthquakes, storms, diseases, predators, and natural disasters of every kind. We learned that waiting for perfect safety means waiting forever. Dr. Beth Ryan joined him at the speaker's platform. Human psychology is shaped by our environment. We do not see danger as something to avoid completely. We see danger as a problem that needs a solution. But why do you risk your lives for strangers? Asked a delegate from the Peaceful Healer Coalition. Beth smiled. Because today's stranger might be tomorrow's friend. When we save someone, we make the universe a little bit safer for everyone. Human survival depends on cooperation. A young Valerian observer stood up. It was Trix Allen, who had worked with Pete Williams at the mining station. I have seen humans work. They do not fear failure. They fear not trying. That is correct, Admiral Carter agreed. We would rather try and fail than never try at all. Failure teaches us lessons. Not trying teaches us nothing. Supreme Arbiter Yelthara consulted her notes. The Council has a proposal. We want to create a new organization, the Galactic Emergency Response Division. This group would handle disasters and crises that normal methods cannot solve. She paused and looked directly at the human delegation. We want humans to lead this division. Your methods are unconventional, but they work. Admiral Carter considered this carefully. We would be honored to help, but we have conditions. Name them, Yelthara said. First, mixed crews only. Humans work best when we have different perspectives and skills around us. Second, proper training for all non-human crew members. They need to understand that emergency situations require fast decisions and calculated risks. Dr. Beth Ryan added. Third, we need psychological support systems. Many species find human emergency methods very stressful. We do not want our alien friends to suffer mental trauma from working with us. The assembly buzzed with discussion. Different species talked among themselves in their various languages. Finally, Supreme Arbiter Yelthara called for order. The conditions are acceptable. The Galactic Emergency Response Division will be established with human leadership and mixed crews. Training programs will be developed to help other species work effectively in emergency situations. Elder Vashmorn stood again. I have one question for Dr. Ryan. Why do humans volunteer for missions where they might die? Beth thought carefully before answering. Because someone has to volunteer. If we wait for perfect safety, people die while we wait. We choose to act despite the danger, not because we ignore it. Do you not fear death? Asked Malketh, the warrior, species representative. Of course we fear death, Admiral Carter replied. Fear keeps us alive, but we do not let fear stop us from doing what is necessary. A small aquatic being in the back asked, what if you make mistakes? What if your methods fail? Then we learn from our mistakes and try better methods next time, Beth said. The only real failure is giving up. 6 months later, the first Galactic Emergency Response Division team launched from Harmony Prime. Admiral Carter commanded the mission ship, the Endeavor. His crew included humans, Valerians, aquatic healers, crystalline beings, and members of a dozen other species. Their first mission was to help a species whose homeworld was dying from climate change. Traditional evacuation would take decades. The human approach was to stabilize the climate using atmospheric processors and solar shields. Dr. Amy Chen led the geological team working to redirect volcanic activity. Pete Williams supervised the construction crews building emergency shelters in extreme environments. Kate Marshall designed atmospheric processors that could work in the planet's toxic air. The alien crew members had been trained in human emergency procedures. They learned to make quick decisions, to improvise solutions, and to accept calculated risks. Most importantly, they learned that humans did not expect them to become human. They just needed to work together as a team. Trix Allen served as the alien liaison officer. She helped her fellow aliens understand human thinking, while helping humans understand alien concerns. Remember, she told the nervous crew members, humans do not take stupid risks. They take smart risks. There is a difference. The mission was a success. The dying world was stabilized and its population was saved. More importantly, the mixed crew worked together effectively. They had learned to combine human courage with alien wisdom. As the Endeavour returned to base, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge with Dr. Ryan. Around them, human and alien crew members worked side by side. "Do you think they finally understand us?" Admiral Carter asked. Beth watched a young healer working with a human engineer to solve a technical problem. "I think they understand that different species have different strengths. When we combine those strengths, we can solve problems that none of us could handle alone." "And the fear of working with crazy humans?" Beth laughed. "Oh, they still think we are crazy, but now they think we are useful crazy." Admiral Carter nodded. "I can live with that." Outside the ship's windows, the stars shone brightly. Each one represented worlds full of different species, different ways of thinking, and different approaches to problems. But they all shared one thing now: the knowledge that when disaster struck, help would come. And that help would include humans who were willing to risk everything to save strangers they had never met.